So we're at the tail end of August now, meaning that summer is winding down and fall is ramping up, but before I start overindulging in pumpkin spice lattes or revisiting Over the Garden Wall or playing a bunch of Steam Deck games that hopefully are not so terrifying that I end up chucking my deck across the room, first I wanted to go over some pickups that I got in August. And the first is a game that I've been excited about since I first saw the trailer for it, I believe in one of the PlayStation presentations, and that is Rollerdrome. For starters, Rollerdrome immediately reminded me of Rollerball, not the 2002 remake, but rather the 1975 original with James Caan, and I'm sure that served at least as some inspiration for this game. The year is 2033, and you play as Kara Hassan, a competitor in the Death Sport Rollerdrome, which is a roller derby / Max Payne hybrid. On the one hand, you'll be busting out grinds, grabs, flips, and wall rides, and just generally putting on a good show, but aside from the raw style points that you get from successfully performing all of these maneuvers, you also have to take into account that you'll be doing so under heavy fire from a variety of enemies looking to end your life with bats, machine guns, sniper fire, and rockets. Downing enemies stylistically lets you refill your health, and performing the aforementioned tricks lets you refill your ammo. So the game plays out like a ballet of death where you're constantly tracking enemy targets and incoming threats in between calculating your next trick. Now truthfully, and much to my delight, you cannot bail out, so you really don't have to worry about perfectly landing a trick as you're falling back down to earth. But you'll still want to be careful about which tricks you choose to bust out when, because mistiming a jump or hanging onto a spin for too long might leave you vulnerable to incoming fire. So the mechanics interlink exceedingly well and keep each run exciting, even if there's a fairly limited number of environments. There's a story here too that's told between runs where you can unlock additional tidbits that flesh out Rollerdrome's world, and information about Kara herself. So far I'm absolutely loving what I'm seeing here because it's fast, fun, and outrageously stylish. I seriously just want to get a Rollerdrome print so badly based on the art style alone, which looks like a Mondo poster just exploded out in video game form. The mechanics are simple enough to get a grip on, but forgive the pun, tricky enough to allow for a lot of creativity. Not to mention it runs at a rock solid 60 FPS on the deck. My only minor gripe is that the text can be a little small in the menu interface or when you're trying to read text in the environments that you explore in between matches. But thankfully pulling the left trigger natively zooms in during these sequences to give you a closer look, or you could always fall back on the Steam plus L1 button to zoom in if you're having trouble reading something like the pre-match challenges. But yeah, so far I'm just having a whole lot of fun with Rollerdrome, and it just feels like a Tony Hawk game, albeit with guns added, but I'm really glad that they made the decision to not allow you to bail out when performing tricks, because that would have just been too much to keep track of considering how chaotic the game already is. And speaking of rolling around, albeit at much higher speeds, another game that I grabbed in August was Hot Wheels Unleashed. Now I already have this on Xbox, and actually now that I think about it, it might not even be fair to say that I grabbed this one. Rather what happened was Matt Sanderson recommended to me in the comments that I check out Humble Choice, which is a monthly subscription service where you get Steam games at a very steep discount, and I was happy to see that in August one of the games on offer was Hot Wheels Unleashed. So Matt, if you're watching, thanks so much for that. I think that's going to be a really helpful service for me moving forward, especially if I keep doing videos like these that highlight a variety of games, so thanks for the heads up. Now getting back to Hot Wheels, Unleashed is just wicked good fun that takes the thrill of collecting Hot Wheels cars and lets you unleash their power in a pretty straightforward arcade racer. It's not breaking any especially new ground here, mechanically speaking, but it's charming enough racing in these comparatively small, human-sized environments that are just super huge compared to a Hot Wheels car, and sort of hilarious seeing your longest drift measured in inches. Now Hot Wheels does have microtransactions, but in fairness they're not as aggressively pushed on you as I've seen in other titles, and working through the campaign you'll unlock new cars directly, customization options for your basement, and a wealth of coins and gears to purchase even more cars and customizable options. The racing itself is pretty straightforward with drifts, boosts, and ramps that snake around a variety of locations like basements, garages, or a construction site. Controlling your car in power slides, drifts, or manipulating your position during a jump all feel great, and you can find shortcuts, which gives it a creative element as well. And actually landing some of those shortcut jumps really reminded me of the first time that I found the shortcut on Rainbow Road, I believe on Mario Kart 64. I don't think it was in the Super Nintendo where I did that, but yeah, as soon as I actually landed one, that was the first thing that I thought of. And speaking of creativity, there's a track creator as well, although I haven't really had a chance to mess around with it yet. But the real standout here are the visuals, which just painstakingly recreate not just the models of the cars, but all the imperfections in the assembly process, fingerprints, scuffed paint, and the like, which goes a really long way towards capturing the nostalgia of the Hot Wheels brand. Now, as performance goes, the default setting for Hot Wheels Unleashed when you fire it up on the Steam Deck is having all of the settings set to Ultra, which doesn't quite get you to 60 FPS, and you will definitely notice some frame dips there. And if there's one genre where you definitely don't want to have frames that are dropping on you, or at least they would be more noticeable, I would say it's the racing genre. But I found that dropping the quality to high or medium got it closer to 60, but if you don't mind taking a frame hit, I actually found that setting the refresh rate to 50 and a frame rate of 50 also worked great on Ultra settings, and was smooth enough for a have your cake and eat it too scenario. I won't say that Hot Wheels Unleashed is the best arcade racer I've ever played or anything, but it's definitely one of the better ones that I've seen in recent years, and if you haven't played it yet, you should definitely check it out. Next up is a game that I bought because it was just getting so much hype, and even some of my close friends were really excited for it, and having now played it I can see why, and that is Cult of the Lamb. Cult of the Lamb takes a fairly terrifying prospect and then just cutes it up real hard with an adorable coat of chibi-style paint. You play as the final lamb who's been resurrected by an ancient deity, and then go on to serve this deity by gradually building a cult in his name, with a mission to take down the baddies responsible for his imprisonment. It's decidedly dark stuff right from the outset, and believe me, it only gets darker as you start building out your following. But again, all of the cult management gameplay is made slightly more palatable by just how sickeningly cute everything looks from you to your followers, and even a lot of the enemies look like someone dragged a bunch of Binding of Isaac mobs through a Build-A-Bear. Your time in Cult of the Lamb will be split between two specific gameplay arenas. The first is roguelike combat, where you'll be journeying out into enemy territory to explore, down bosses, and procure resources to take care of your flock, or just, again, finding new cult members to add to your flock. Then after a long day of heretic slaying, you'll end up back at your cult's base camp for a breather. This is where you can tackle such logistical challenges as building new structures, caring for and inspiring your followers, or just cleaning up their poop. Which is not exactly what I envisioned for myself as a powerful cult leader, but here we are. The combat is pretty straightforward with an attack, a power you can use, and also a merciful dodge roll, and from what I've played so far, it's engaging enough to keep things interesting. From run to run, you might also find tarot cards that you can select to augment your abilities, snatch up new followers to send back to camp, and soldier on towards resurrecting your deity. But this is a roguelike after all, so depending on your drops each run, it might end in victory or crushing defeat. But so far, death seems to be pretty forgiving in that you'll lose a few resources or items that you've gathered, but not all of them. So even in death, you'll come back just a little bit stronger after licking your wounds back at the cult's camp. And speaking to the management side of Cult of the Lamb's gameplay, I think that might actually be my favorite piece of it over the combat. It's just weirdly satisfying to see your minions going about their chores and building up a stable base of operations, and then watching them just unflinchingly serve your will, at least until they catch a disease from the poop you didn't clean up and unfortunately they croak. At which point, you will have some very interesting decisions to make. And speaking of things like pestilence and disease that might ravage a population all while some mysterious hero just swings around a pointy object, next up is Thymesia. Or it might be Thymesia. Thymesia? Let's just go with Thymesia. Now, I haven't gone back through all of my videos to confirm this, but I'm fairly certain that Bloodborne is probably my second most referenced game on this channel. And Bloodborne fans have been exceedingly patient waiting for a PC port, or maybe a remaster of the original Bloodborne, or hopefully someday a sequel to Bloodborne. But Thymesia might at least ease that pain a little bit with what looks to be a loving nod to Bloodborne, but with enough refreshing twist that it doesn't look like they're just copying FromSoft's homework. In Thymesia, you'll step into the Greaves of Corvus, a mysterious protagonist who wields the power of disease to battle a variety of enemies. And you're on a mission to find truth in your own memories, which admittedly sounds a little cryptic, but to be fair, FromSoft games are a lot cryptic, so, I'll count my blessings here. Now, I've only played this one a little bit, and like Hot Wheels, out of the box it's set to ultra graphic settings by default, which makes performance on the deck pretty spotty. However, after dropping it down to medium settings and disabling things like motion blur and capping the frame rate at 40, I was able to get a much smoother experience. I'm still testing it to see if I can find the right balance for performance, but if you're choosing between the deck and something like the PS5 or a gaming rig, you might be better served there if you're really looking to sink your teeth into this particular Bloodborne clone. And you just might want to jump into Thymesia because technical issues aside, the combat feels pretty great here. Now, if you're old hat at doing light and strong attacks with the right bumper and trigger, parries, dodging, and visceral attacks, a lot of what's on offer in Thymesia is going to feel familiar. But it also has its own spin on these mechanics, particularly with the wound system, where a green bar of wound damage is displayed underneath the standard white health bar for enemies. This will regenerate unless you chip away at this as well, or you can do a claw attack that is specifically designed to knock down big chunks of the wound bar. Meaning there's an interesting synchronicity at play between the standard attacks and wound-focused attacks. Now, there's a very thin line between being derivative and paying homage, but honestly I think Thymesia is going to end up walking it. It's clear the developers had a lot of love for Bloodborne, and Lord knows the fanbase has been thirsting for more of that aggressive style of gameplay. Now, obviously it doesn't feel as polished, however it's clear that Bloodborne's DNA is woven throughout the experience, and for $30 instead of like 60 or 70, this is one that I want to stick out. Although I will say that if I can't find that sweet spot between graphical fidelity and performance, I may end up going for a physical PS5 copy of this. But now for a different sort of survival experience, the last game that I grabbed because it looked super fun and my friend Mario was bugging me to play it with her, is Raft. Raft is a survival game where you find yourself predictably stuck on a raft. And over time you'll sort out how to not just survive, but also thrive on the open sea. I know there's a story component, and I know I've seen glances of videos where people have built absolute mega rafts, but so far I'm still in the early parts of this game trying to figure out how to make a water reclaimer work. I did make it to at least one island so far, and even managed to drop an anchor I hastily crafted out of a bucket and some rocks. But so far all I've really accomplished is passing out from thirst and using my plastic hook to bring in a whole mess of random garbage floating in the sea. To be fair, I've expanded my raft a little bit, but I suspect it's going to take me a while to come to grips with this one. But then again, if you were stranded on a raft in the middle of the ocean, it would be a rough time. So I'm not really sure what I expected there, but I will say in the small bits of progress that I made so far, and I do mean basic stuff just like making a spear to fend off a shark attack or repairing a part of my boat that's been damaged by said shark attack, it really does feel thrilling. And I imagine that the more I play, hopefully with friends who can kind of carry me a little bit as I get my bearings, that it will end up being a fun experience. Now, this doesn't represent every game that I grabbed in August, really just a few of the ones that I was most excited to talk about. However, there was one more that I wanted to mention, which is a game that I wanted to play forever and I found it on sale, and that is Gorogoa. And I believe it is just a puzzler that is supposed to have a really good narrative associated with it, but I'd always been curious about it. So if you're curious too, here's a free copy if you're quick enough. I'll throw a Steam code up here, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there real quick. Alright, so that's it for this one. Again, I just wanted to go over some of my personal favorites, or I guess the ones that I'm most excited about in August that I grabbed. But what about you? Did you grab anything particularly awesome in August that you would recommend for the Steam Deck? If so, please let me know in the comments below. Also, if you have any raft tips, I am all ears because I am quite literally drowning over here. So yeah, anyways, thank you again for taking the time out of your day to watch these videos. I really, really appreciate it. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.